Lin Ruoxi stood in front of the observation window of the flying boat. Her eyes penetrated the starry sea and landed on the distorted space far away. That is the goal of their trip, the crack. A group of wounds torn by the universe, which was so black that it made people creepy. The light around it was sucked in, and even the most advanced detectors could not fully analyze its essence. She adjusted the data display on her helmet, and a series of red warning data jumped on the screen, reminding her that the danger level in this area was already overwhelming. Ruoxi, are you sure we're going to get close to that thing? Qingguang's voice came from the communication device, low and slight sensational, as if an old friend was joking with you. I just scanned it again. The energy fluctuations around the cracks can tear our little broken ship into pieces. You know, I don't want to turn into a pile of cosmic garbage. Ruoxi's mouth slightly raised his mouth, ignoring Qingguang's complaints, and his fingers quickly operated on the control panel to adjust the course of the ship. She was wearing a smart battle suit with a stitched body, and her long body was tightly matched by the black and silver color. Her short hair was tidy behind her brain, revealing her stubborn and curious eyes. She grew up in the slums on the edge of the earth. She had seen her habits and deficiencies. The only thing that made her feel alive was this stimulation that faced the unknown. Don't say nothing, Qingguang. Are you not the best AI in the league? If you can't handle such a small matter, I might as well change to a cheaper one. She was relaxed, but her eyes were always locked on the cracks, as if she could see some secret from that darkness. Qingguang pretended to be silenced, and his voice was helpless. Okay, Oklahoma, I'm a tool without human rights anyway. But I have to remind you that the "I'm willing to die" is not written in the mission book of the Star Alliance. We're just here to investigate, not to be cannon fodder. Ruoxi didn't answer, and his fingers knocked on the console, and various thoughts were surging in his brain. This mission was directly dispatched by the International Alliance, which is said to investigate the newly discovered crack phenomena in the neighboring star domain, but the specific information is too small. Things like cracks have only begun to appear frequently in recent years. They appear anywhere in the universe at random, swallowing up all the objects that are approaching, and even the first-mover teams cannot get close to them. Why is the Alliance high-level suddenly interested in this thing? He also asked her to be a self-invested explorer to carry out this high-risk mission. She slammed her head and slowly pressed these questions. No matter what cat there is behind it, it is the greatest freedom for her to leave the pressure colonial star ring and explore the universe. From small to adulthood, she was not a person who could be at peace. She always felt that she was not anywhere. The only thing that could make her feel at ease was to keep moving forward and chase those unknown things. The flying boat was approaching the cracks, and the starry sky around it began to become strange, and the light was twisted, as if it was stirred by some invisible force. The data on the instrument hops violently, and the curve of energy fluctuations almost broke through the screen. Ruoxi snaked her eyebrows, switched manually to the assisted driving mode, and stabilized the posture of the flying boat. Qingguang, the energy barrier is open to the maximum, so don't let us be sucked in. Her voice was cold, but her palms were sweating slightly. I received it, and the barrier is fully opened. But I have to say that the gravitational field of this thing is stronger than expected, and our energy storage may not last long. Qingguang executed the order and did not forget to complain. Are you sure you don't retreat first, find a safety point and then study it slowly? Safety? Ruoxi sneered. The deadline for the Alliance is 3 days, and now half of it has passed. Zhang Haoran's veteran is still waiting for me to go back and submit the report. How can I have time to come slowly? When talking about Zhang Haoran, Qingguang's words were filled with a little more joking. Oh, when it comes to that commander, I remember he warned you last time, don't be too aggressive, otherwise he will take you back to the headquarters. Do you think he is secretly beating you? He always looks angry and concerned. Ruoxi rolled her eyes and replied without any hesitation, close your mouth, the sky is shining. If you want to say nothing, I will turn off your voice module. Okay, Oklahoma, I'll close my mouth. Qingguang pretended to be well-designed, but he still couldn't hide his smile in his language. The flying boat continued to move forward, getting closer and closer to the cracks, and the surrounding environment became even more unstable. Suddenly, a harsh warning light flashed in the driveway, and an unusual wave of energy was rushing towards them on the plate. What the hell? Ruoxi suddenly pulled the steer and tried to make the flying ship deviate from the track, but the energy wave was so fast that it hit the side of the flying ship in an instant. The entire flying boat was shocked violently, as if it was slapped hard by an invisible hand. Ruoxi was thrown to the console by habit, and the sound of her helmet hit made her ears buzz. The alarm sound became more and more rapid, and Chen Guang's voice became severe. Ruoxi, the engine on the left side was slapped, and the energy barrier dropped to 40%. We have to retreat immediately, otherwise we will be torn apart. Retreat. Ruoxi gritted her teeth and kept steady in the flying boat, staring at the direction of the crack. Just in the moment, she glanced at the depth of the crack and seemed to flash through a faint light, not like a natural phenomenon, but more like a signal. Chen Guang, is there a record of the energy wave just now? What is that? She asked as she operated the flying boat. Analyzing, wait, this is not a natural wave, like some directional attack. Chen Guang's language was shocked. The data shows that the frequency of this wave is a bit similar to that of the Alliance's weapon system, but it is not exactly the same. Ruoxi, some people don't want to let us get close to the crack. Ruoxi's heart was tight and his fingers flew fast on the console to try to stabilize the posture of the boat. Directed attack? Who would attack her in this bird's edge star field? People inside the Alliance? Or other forces? There were countless possibilities in her brain, but now she has no time to think about it. The first task is to survive. Chen Guang, switch to battle mode, scan if there is any enemy target around her. She was so excited that a warlike voice ignited in her eyes. Received, the battle mode is activated. Scanning. No visible target has been found at present, but the source of the energy wave seems to be from the inside of the crack. Chen Guang answered quickly, but there was a hint of doubt in his language. Ruoxi, this is not right, why are there attacking signals in the crack? Isn't this a natural phenomenon? Nature looks like a ghost. Ruoxi said softly, and his eyes locked on the light point deep in the crack again. At this moment, a sudden noise came from the communication device, like some interference signal, and then, a faint and continuous sound came out. Help, help, we're stuck here. Ruoxi was stunned and almost thought she had heard something wrong. She quickly adjusted the communication frequency and tried to capture more signals, but the sound disappeared after only a few seconds, as if it had never existed. Chen Guang, have you heard the sound just now? There was a hint of anxiety in her voice. I heard it, like a distress signal, but the source cannot be determined. Chen Guang's temperament also became serious. I tried to follow it. The signal band was very old and completely disagree with the existing communication system in the Alliance. In fact, is this a bit like a technology from several decades ago? 10 years ago? Ruoxi raised her eyebrows, and a thought flashed in her brain that made her heart beat faster. A few decades ago, the Alliance sent an exploration team to the border star field to try to explore the crack phenomenon that was just discovered at that time, but the team was completely defeated during the mission and no one came back. The official statement is that they encountered a cracked gravitational scene and were swallowed up completely, but there have been rumors in the shop that said that the team actually discovered something that should not be discovered. In order to cover up the truth, the Alliance deliberately made them miss it. Is it hard to tell, the just call for help from that missing team? This thought made Ruoxi's blood boil. She has never been a man of rules. The unknown is like poison to her. Knowing that the danger is dangerous, she can't help but want to get close. She gritted her teeth and decided to take a chance. Chen Guang, I'm ready to release and detect the unmanned aircraft. I want to see what is hidden in the crack. Her temperament is unquestionable. Ruoxi, are you crazy? The flying boat is almost broken. Do you still want to take the initiative to drill in? Chen Guangming looked unsatisfied, and there was a hint of anxiety in his voice. If you hear me, retreat first, repair the engine before saying that. The Alliance's mission does not require us to die. My mission is a mission, and my decision is mine. Ruoxi replied coldly, his fingers already started to operate the unmanned release program. If you are afraid of death, just turn off the system. Don't worry. Qingguang was silent for a few seconds, then he lowered his voice. Okay, I know I can't help you. It's time to prepare for nothing, but I want to make it clear that this is definitely an idea. Ruoxi ignored its complaints and stared at the real-time scene where there was no human being on the screen. The unmanned aircraft rushed towards the cracks, and the pictures captured by the lens became increasingly strange. The surrounding space seemed to be torn by countless hands, and the light and objects were twisted into strange shapes. Just as the unmanned plane was about to enter the edge of the crack, the screen suddenly trembled violently, and then the screen was completely black, as if it was swallowed directly by something. No one lost contact and data transmission was interrupted. Ruoxi didn't answer, and her brain was still recalling the last screen that had just been reposted by no one. At that moment, she seemed to see a vague shadow, like the skeleton of some artificial structure, hidden in the cracked darkness. That is not a natural phenomenon, but more like some kind of ancient technological phenomenon. Her heart beats faster and faster, and the desire deep in her heart was almost shaking the restraint of reason. She knew that continuing to get close to the crack might mean a life and death, but if she retreated this way, she would never know the truth. At this moment, another sound suddenly came from the communication device, with a low and electronic interference feeling, as if it had been deliberately dealt with. Lin Ruoxi, don't go forward again. You are not ready for the secret of facing the crack. Ruoxi was stunned and stopped her fingers on the console. She had never heard of this sound, but the other party called her by her name as if she had known her for a long time. Who are you? She quickly switched the communication channel and tried to lock the signal source, but the other party's voice was transmitted from the air, which was completely useless. Call me Yi Xiaofeng. The sound was calm and cold, with a lofty meaning. I have the information you need, but only if you have to survive. Listen to my advice, retreat now, or you and your AI friends will be part of the rift. Ruoxi's heart was tight and she had no doubts in her brain. Leaf style? She had never heard of this name, but the other party's temperament and sources of information made her feel uneasy. Who is this person? Why do you know her mission? Why warn her? She had not come to respond yet, and the flying boat suddenly shook violently again, as if it was being pulled by some huge force, quickly slamming in the direction of the crack. The data on the instrument panel was completely out of control, and the alarm sounded so harsh that it almost broke the eardrums. Ruoxi. The gravitational field suddenly increased and we were sucked in. Qingguang finally panicked in his voice, cut the engine quickly and push it in reverse, otherwise we will be finished. Ruoxi bit his teeth and flew fast on the console, but the flying boat's posture was completely out of control, as if he was being dragged to the deep penis by an invisible hand. The cracked darkness kept magnifying in front of her eyes, as if she opened a huge mouth, waiting to swallow everything. Her heartbeat was so fast that she almost jumped out of her chest, but there was no flash in her eyes. The unknown fear and desire intertwined in her heart, making her almost forget the danger. No matter what, she must know what is hidden in the crack. Ruoxi held the slug tightly with his hands tightly, and sweat slid down at the altitude, dripping on the edge of the console, making a slight tick sound. The shock of the flying boat became more and more intense, as if it was being dragged by an invisible giant beast, heading towards the rift's dark wall. The red warning lights in the driving wheels were flickering wildly, and the harsh warning sounds mixed with the anxious shouts of Qingguang, filling the entire space with a sense of pressure. Ruoxi. The engine's reverse push has been opened to its maximum, but the gravity field is too strong and cannot be offset at all. Qingguang's voice was low and rapid, and his usual humorous atmosphere was no longer visible. I will say it again, cut off the main engine and start the emergency escape mode, otherwise we will not be able to hold it for a second. Close your mouth, the sky. Ruoxi gritted her teeth and locked her eyes tightly on the cracks outside the window. The darkness seemed to be alive, constantly twisting and radiating, and the edges were torn into strange fragments, making people feel numb when they saw it. Her fingers quickly hit the console and tried to regain control of the flight, but the data on the instrument had become a group, as if they were completely disturbed by some kind of interference. Escape mode? That thing allows us to have a few more minutes of activity, and it's better to have a good time. There was a stubbornness in her voice, even a little bit of nothing. Deep inside, the desire for the unknown was burning like a flame, making her almost forget life and death. The distress signal in the crack, the blurred shadows of the dead, and the mysterious sound of the storm that called the storm of the leaves, these fragments sprinkled a vague picture in her brain, making her unable to stop. Cake a fight? Ruoxi, you're losing your life. Chen Guang raised his voice rarely, and his language was clearly dissatisfied. I was designed to protect you, not to play a self-killing game with you. I heard from me, now I'm giving up the control, start the escape gear, at least I have the chance to contact the Alliance for help. Ruoxi ignored it and glanced over the few data windows left on the screen. The energy barrier of the flying ship has dropped to 20% of the danger, the engine on the left side has almost completely evacuated, and the entire ship produces a tooth-inspiring metal twist sound from the pull of the gravitational field. She knew that Chen Guang said it was right. If they continued to resist, they might not have any scum left. But her straightforwardness told her that the things hidden in the crack were worthy of everything she could have. Chen Guang, stop talking. Help me adjust all the reserved energy to the barrier. Also, start the last detector unmanned machine. I need to know what is pulling us in the crack. Her temperament was unquestionable, and her fingers had already started to operate the reserve system. Chen Guang was silent for 2 seconds, and then he heard a helpless voice, okay, I know I won't say it's going to move you. When you are using energy to adjust, the barrier strength will be increased to 35%. If you don't have a chance to prepare, it will be a big deal, but I want to remind you that this is the last one, and if you lose it, you will be completely useless. Stop talking, ejaculate. Ruoxi replied coldly, staring at the actual screen on the screen. The unmanned aircraft blasted out from the bottom of the flying ship, carrying a faint blue tail flame, flying rapidly towards the direction of the crack. The screen returned by the lens depends on the old pattern. The space seems to be cut by countless lenses, and the light is twisted into strange shapes. Sometimes you can see an arc passing by, like some kind of energy wandering in the dark. The vibration of the flying ship became more and more intense, and Ruoxi could even hear the burst sound from a certain part of the ship, as if the structure had reached its limit. Her heart beats as fast as a drum beat, but there is no flash in her eyes. The unmanned screen suddenly flashed and captured a blurred silhouette. It was not a natural rock or fragment, but a huge slaughter like an artificial structure, covered with strange patterns, like some ancient symbol. A corner of the dead body was still flashing with a faint light, like a source of some signal. Chen Guang, did you see it? What is that? Ruoxi's voice was filled with excitement, and his fingers were clenched unconsciously. I saw, in data analysis, but the interference was too strong to be accurately identified. Chen Guang's temperament also became solemn. But I can confirm that this is definitely not a natural phenomenon. The material of that structure does not match any known technology in the Alliance, like, from another era, or another place. Another place? Ruoxi's heart was tightened, and the meaningful warning of the leaves flashed in her brain. You are not ready to face the secret of cracks. Is it hard to say that this crack is really a certain channel leading to a completely unknown world? Her thoughts were still unclear, and the scene of the unmanned screen suddenly shook violently, and then the screen was completely black, as if it was directly crushed by some force. The unmanned aircraft loses contact and the data transmission is in the midst of transmission. Chen Guang reported coldly, but there was a threat of powerlessness in his language. Ruoxi, I really have no tricks now. The flying ship is less than 1,000 meters away from the crack, and the strength of the gravitational field is still increasing. We will 30 seconds at most. Ruoxi bit her lower lip and glanced over everything inside the driving wheel, the twisted console, the flashing warning lights, and the darkness that was close to the window. In 30 seconds, even the escape gear was not enough to start. She suddenly realized that this might be her final opportunity to make a decision. Guang, listen. Her voice suddenly calmed down, as if she had made up some decision. If we were sucked in, remember your core command, protect me, no matter what price you used. Ruoxi, what do you mean? Guang's voice was a little uneasy. Don't tell me, you plan to give up and resist and go in. Ruoxi didn't answer, but the corner of her mouth slightly raised, revealing a bitter smile. From small to adulthood, she was always alone, fleeing from the slums, from the pressure of colonial stars, and even from those who had cared about her. She thought that chasing the unknown could fill the empty space in her heart, but at this moment, facing this crack that might swallow everything, she suddenly felt an unprecedented loneliness. Guang, if I die, remember to send the data back up to Zhang Haoran. Her voice was low, with a faint feeling. Tell him, I didn't mean to ignore his warning. Ruoxi. Don't say this. Guang suddenly slammed her, and his voice was filled with a rare anxiousness. I won't let you die. Activate the urgent energy distribution, and I want to concentrate all resources on the barrier, at least by the peak of gravitational force. Ruoxi didn't say anything anymore, but just clicked silently. The shock of the flying boat was so strong that she could hardly sit down. The lights in the driving wheels flickered in dark, as if they would be extinguished at any time. The edge of the crack magnified before her eyes, and a strange light flashed in the darkness, as if calling her, or mocking her powerlessness. Just as the flying boat was about to touch the crack, a strong energy wave suddenly exploded from the depth of the crack, like some sleeping giant beast was awakened. The flying ship was pushed hard by this force, as if it was thrown out by an invisible hand. The entire ship rolled over in the starry sky for several times before he could hardly maintain his stable posture. What's the situation? Ruoxi grabbed the console suddenly and looked out the window with a dazed look. The space around the crack seemed to have been torn a larger hole, and a strange purple light burst out from the darkness, like a certain energy flow, carrying a low-frequency sound of birds, making people feel palpitations. The energy wave reaches its peak, but the gravitational field is actually weakening. Guang's voice was filled with disbelief. Ruoxi, we were pushed out. This is not a natural phenomenon. It seems that some kind of defense mechanism was touched. Anti-prevention mechanism? Ruoxi raised her eyebrows, and her brain flashed through the deadly images captured by no one. What's in the cracks are not only dead bodies, but also an intentional system. Her heartbeat accelerated again, but this time it was not because of fear, but because of excitement. This proved that her straightforwardness was not a single natural phenomenon. The flying boat was barely stable and floating outside a safe distance of several kilometers from the cracks. The energy barrier has been almost exhausted, and the ship is mostly damaged, and a continuous alarm is issued. Ruoxi gasped heavily and leaned against the seat, her eyes still locked in the direction of the crack. The purple light was still flowing slowly, like some kind of barrier blocking the outside world's exploration. Guang, record the energy fluctuation data just now. I want to know what that is. Her voice was sandy, but her language was filled with unquestionable determination. The data has been stored, but Ruoxi, our condition is very bad. Guang was very angry. The main engine was damaged by 70%, and the energy was only 5% left. The communication system was also interfered and could not contact the Alliance. Are you sure you should continue? Ruoxi was silent for a few seconds, and then said in a low voice, if it doesn't continue, there is no place to go. The deadline for the Alliance is still 1 day left, so Zhang Haoran will not accept the reason of mission failure. But we are even protecting ourselves now. Guang replied in surprise, Ruoxi, if you hear me, find a safe point to repair the flying boat first, at least resume communication, and contact Zhang Haoran for help. Although he was hard-mouthed, he would not be able to save him. Ruoxi did not answer immediately, and Zhang Haoran's face flashed in her brain, the commander who was full of facial hair and always had a slutty look, impatient. He was indeed angry and concerned about her, like a slutty big brother, but she never liked to owe favors, especially those in the Alliance. She knew that once a request for help, the initiative of the mission would no longer belong to her and might even be forced to recall. Just as she was hesitating, a messy voice suddenly came from the communication device, followed by the familiar and low voice, "Lin Ruoxi," I said, "you are not ready yet." Ruoxi sat upright suddenly, his eyes swept toward the communication device. "Yi Xiaofeng? It's you again. Who are you? Why are you always following me?" The other party's voice sneered, as if she had expected her reaction. "It doesn't matter who I am, what's important is that I can help you survive. The secret of the crack is more dangerous than you think. The Alliance sent you here and just treated you as a bastard. Do you think the just-in-law energy fluctuation is a coincidence? That's someone who doesn't want you to get close." "Someone?" Ruoxi's heart tightened, his fingers clenched into fists unconsciously. "Are you talking about someone from the Alliance? Or other forces?" Yi Xiaofeng didn't answer directly, but said lightly, "If you want to know the truth, live first. I have sent you a set of AIs that are tagged to you. It is a temporary repair station, less than half a day away from you. Go there to fix the boat, and then we will talk about it." "Why do you want to help me?" Ruoxi asked coldly, his temperament was full of precepts. She didn't like this feeling of being pulled over her nose, especially because the other party still hid his head and exposed his tail, and even his true face was not revealed. "Because you are useful to me." Yi Xiaofeng's voice was calm and cold. "Lin Ruoxi, don't you want to know the truth about the crack? I can give you an answer, but only if you have to hear my suggestions." The communication suddenly broke down, as if the other party actively cut off the contact. Ruoxi glanced at the head of her eyebrows and glanced at the console. Sure enough, she saw a set of unfamiliar coordinate data appearing on the screen. "Qingguang, is this seat reliable?" she asked softly, with a silk silhouette in her language. Verifying, the data source cannot be traced, but the area pointed to by the coordinates does have a small repair station, which belongs to neutral force and is not directly controlled by the Alliance. Qingguang's language brought a little doubt. "Ruoxi, who is this guy? How can our communication system invade at will?" "I don't know." Ruoxi gritted her teeth and looked in the direction of the crack again. The purple light was still flowing slowly, like some insurmountable barrier. She knew that Yi Xiaofeng was right, and now she really didn't have the ability to get close to the cracks, and even the flying boat was about to fall apart. Set the course and go to the location. She finally made up her mind, her voice low and firm. "No matter whether this guy is an enemy or a friend, since he knows the secret of the crack, I can't let this line go." "Received, the course is being set." Qingguang replied helplessly, and then added, "But I have to say, this is definitely a very high-risk decision. If this is a trap, we might not have the chance to run." Ruoxi didn't answer, but just leaned on the seat, closed her eyes, and kept recalling the deadly images of the cracks in her brain. The ancient structure, the faint signal, and the continuous call for help, these fragments were smuggled in her brain like a picture, and they could never form a complete image. The flying boat adjusts its direction and drives towards its seating location. The engine's thunder sound continued, as if it would shut down at any time. The starry sky outside the window was cold and cold, but a fire was ignited in Ruoxi's heart. She knew that this mission was no longer a simple investigation, but involved some bigger secret, and might even change her knowledge of the entire Star Alliance. What is the truth about the crack? What purpose is the leaf winter hidden? These questions surround her like shadows, making her unable to stop. Whether there is a trap or hope ahead, she must continue to move on, because this is the only way she can prove her existence. The flying boat glided slowly in the starry sky, and the sound of the engine continued, as if he could not breathe at any time. The lights in the driving wheels were dim, and only a few chickens were left to support them with light sources, reflecting Lin Ruoxi's face was white and exhausted. She leaned against the seat, and the data display on the smart battle suit flashed faintly, indicating that her heart rate and physical energy were lingering around danger. The sea of stars outside the window was as cold as ever, and occasionally a few broken stone fragments passed by, like scars of the universe, reminding her of her past death. "Ruoxi, it's still 10 minutes away from the location." Qingguang's voice came from the communication device, low and tired, as if it was almost dried up by the AI. but I have to remind you that the energy reserve of the ship is only 3% left, and it may stop at any time. I hope that the repair station really exists, otherwise we can only use drift bottles in the starry sky. Ruoxi pulled the corner of her mouth hard, which was a response. She lowered her head and glanced at the coordinate data on the console. The numbers sent by Yi Xiaofeng were still lying there quietly, like a line to the unknown. She doesn't trust the mysterious hacker at all, but her current situation does not give her too many choices. The flying ships were almost disbanded, and the communication system was interfered, so the Alliance headquarters could not contact us. The only way out was to catch a chance to see if this repair station could really save their lives. Chen Light scans the surrounding environment and report any abnormalities immediately. Her voice was filled with fatigue after a long period of tightening, but her eyes were still sharp, as if she was ready to face a new crisis at any time. Received, scanned. No abnormal target has been found at present, but the interference signal still exists, which affects my long-distance detection ability. Chen Guangdao, and there was a little more silly in his language. Ruoxi, do you really believe that leaf style? This guy is not showing his true face. This position is a trap, and we really have no place to run away. Believe it? Ruoxi sneered, and his fingers knocked on the console. I never believed anyone, and it was not reliable for the Alliance to help others. However, since he knew about the crack, he could still invade our system at will and show that there was something in his hand. I don't expect him to be a good person, I just hope he can give me some useful information. Qin Guang didn't say anything anymore, as if he had denied her logic. The flying boat continued to stagger in the starry sky. As it got closer and closer to its location, Ruoxi's vision finally captured a vague silhouette, a small artificial structure, like an abandoned space station, floating on the edge of a stone belt. Its appearance was broken and its surface was filled with pits left by collision, but several faint indicator lights were still flashing, as if they were reluctant to keep moving. It doesn't look like the Alliance's facilities, nor does it look like the underground slumbers in the black market. Qin Guang analyzed, with a hint of confusion in his voice, there is no matching record found in the database. It may be a temporary station built by privately. Ruoxi, are we going to get close? It's all here, can you still turn back? Ruoxi gritted her teeth and manually adjusted the course of the ship to make it approach the space station. As the distance was shorter, she could see more clearly the details of the site, several broken joints, an old mechanical arm, and several abandoned cargo modules scattered around. This place looks like a product from several decades ago, and it is so destructive that people wonder whether it can operate normally. The flying boat was difficult to connect to one of the gantry, making a harsh metal friction sound, like two iron pieces of raw steel colliding together. Ruoxi put on a battle suit and checked the casual weapon she wore, an energy dagger and a small handgun. Although the flying boat situation made her unable to bring too many equipment, these at least gave her a little self-protection ability when it comes to keys. Qin Guang, keep the flying system waiting. If there is any abnormality, start the emergency retardation process immediately. She said as she walked towards the gate, and the data display on her helmet reflected her cold and calm eyes. Received, but I have to say, the feeling this place gives me is not very opposite. Qin Guang's voice came from the helmet communication device, low and uneasy. Ruoxi, be careful, don't show off one person. Ruoxi didn't reply, but just pressed the opening key of the air gate. With a low air pressure, the air gate opened quietly, revealing a dim and narrow passage. The air was filled with the smell of metal and oil. The walls on both sides of the passage were covered with slabs. Several exposed cables occasionally flashed through sparks, as if they would short-circuit at any time. She took a deep breath, held the energy dagger tightly, and walked in slowly. The interior of the space station was even more broken than she thought, and the corridor was filled with scrapped parts and broken equipment, as if no one had taken care of it for a long time. Occasionally, there are several urgent lights flashing with a faint light, which illuminates the road ahead. Every time she took a step, the metal floor under her feet would squeak, making people wonder if this place would collapse at any time. Chen Light, scan whether there are any signs of life around you. Ruoxi said in a low voice, his eyes vigilantly. During the scan, no life has been found at present, but there are weak energy waves, and the source is in the central area of the space station. Chen Guang replied, Ruoxi, it is recommended that you find the control room first and restore the communication system. This will at least connect with the Alliance. Control room. Ruoxi murmured, her brain flashing through the low voice of the leaves. She knew that since this place was the seat he provided, he might have been waiting for her somewhere. Instead of being passively waiting, it is better to take the initiative to strike and see what this guy wants to play. She walked along the corridor, through several broken partitions, and finally came to a place that looked like the main control room. There's an old operating table in the center of the room, and a faint blue light flashes on the screen, showing a bunch of malfunctioning data. There are several old pictures hanging on the wall next to it, like a long time ago navigation record. She walked over, touched the operating table with her fingers, and tried to wake up the system. At this moment, a low electronic sound suddenly echoed, followed by the familiar and indifferent voice, Lin Ruoxi, you are faster than I thought. Ruoxi turned around suddenly, and the energy dagger in his hand had already lit up a dark blue light, and his eyes were swept around with a sharp look. However, there was no one in the room, and only a blurry image suddenly popped up on the screen of the operating table, a figure wearing a helmet and with a completely hidden face in the darkness. Well, the wind. Ruoxi opened her mouth coldly, her lingering filled with rings. Don't hide her head and reveal her tail, and speak in person. Show up? The other party's voice sneered, as if he didn't care about her attitude. I'm not interested in letting you see my face. Lin Ruoxi, I said, I can help you, but the premise is that you have to hear me. Hear you? Ruoxi snorted coldly, holding the dagger tightly with his fingers. You don't dare to show your true face. What can I believe you? Tell me, what do you know? What is the secret of the crack? The figure on the screen was slightly tilted, as if looking at her. The cracks are not natural phenomena, but an ancient technological phenomenon, from a civilization that has been longer than human history. They are some kind of space passages that lead to another dimension, but also a prison that seals something that should not exist. The Alliance High Level has known this for a long time. They sent you here not to investigate, but to test the limits of cracks. Do you think you are an explorer? No, you are just their pawn. Ruoxi's heart was tightened, and the dead body was flashing deep in the cracks in the strange purple light. Yi Xiaofeng's words were like a knife, piercing straight into the most uneasy part of her heart. Do you have any evidence? She gritted her teeth and tried to find the broken mark from the other party's language. Certificate? Yi Xiaofeng smiled lightly, and a group of data and images suddenly popped up on the screen. It was the structure inside the crack, and there were several blurry images showing a picture of a team swallowing by some energy around the crack. At the end of the recording, a familiar badge appears on the screen, which is the exclusive tag of the Alliance's high level. Ruoxi's pupils slightly contracted, and her fingers were clenched unconsciously. She thought that the explorer was the one that lost a few decades ago, and the Alliance's badge proved that all this was not accidental, but some deliberate arrangement. Why tell me this? She asked in a low voice, with a complex sentiment in her voice. What do you want from me? I need someone who can get close to the crack. Yi Xiaofeng's voice was calm and cold. I can invade the Alliance system, but the crack's defense mechanism needs physical contact to be cracked. You have this ability, Lin Ruoxi. As long as you are willing to cooperate, I can give you the truth and even help you expose the corruption of the Alliance. Ruoxi was silent, and there seemed to be two forces pulling in her brain. On the one hand, she longed to know the entire secret of the crack and to reveal the true face of the Alliance. On the other hand, she knew that cooperation with Yi Xiaofeng was no different from being a tiger, and the purpose of this guy was never simple. Just as she was hesitating, the space station suddenly vibrated violently, as if it was hit by some external force. After a few flashes of the screen on the operating table, a rapid sound of the sky came. Ruoxi. There are unknown ships approaching, with 3 ships, carrying high-energy weapons. They are locking our flying ship. What? Ruoxi turned his head suddenly, His eyes swept towards the image of the flickering on the screen. "Did you arrange this?" "Not me." Yi Xiaofeng's temperament was still calm. "It seems that the alliance is faster than I expected. They don't want to let you go back alive, Lin Ruoxi. Now you only have one choice: to work with me, or die here." Ruoxi gritted his teeth and quickly weighed the pros and cons in his brain. The space station vibrated again, and a burst sound came from somewhere on the wall, as if it was hit by an energy weapon. She knew that there was not much time left for her. "Chen Guang, start the flight and be ready to leave," she ordered, and then said coldly to the screen, "Yi Xiaofeng, I will cooperate with you at any time, but don't expect me to hear you completely. If I find you are playing tricks on me, I will pull you out with your hands." The figure on the screen was slightly pointed, as if she was not surprised by her decision. "Very good. I will send you a new set of seats, which is a shortcut to the core of the crack. The Alliance's ship will catch up soon, so you'd better take a quick action." The communication broke and the screen turned dark again. Ruoxi took a deep breath, quickly rushed out of the control room, and returned to the flight along the way. The vibration of the space station became more and more intense, and the cables in the corridor began to burn, giving off a pungent burnt smell. She gritted her teeth and passed through a spark, and finally returned to the gate and jumped into the pilot of the flying boat. "Ruoxi, the ship has entered the attack range, and the first wave of energy is about to arrive." Chen Guang's voice was quick and tight. "We must leave immediately, otherwise the flying ship will not be able to stop." "Don't leave." Ruoxi suddenly sat into the driving seat, and his fingers flew on the console. "The new seat has been received. Set the course and move forward at full speed." "The Alliance wants to kill me? Then let's see if they have this ability." The flying boat barely left the space station, and the engine made a harsh sound, as if it would unfold at any time. Outside the window, 3 Alliance ships were approaching quickly, and the light of the energy weapon flashed in the starry sky, like the sword of the god of death. Ruoxi gritted her teeth and her eyes were fixed in the direction of the new coordinate. That was the core area of the crack, a deep impurity she had never touched. "Chen, the barrier is open to the maximum, ready to welcome the impact." There was a sudden decision in her voice, as if she had made the worst plans. "The barrier is fully opened, but the energy is only 5 minutes." Chen Guang replied, feeling helpless in his temperament. "Ruoxi, if I can survive this time, I really have to apply for a salary increase, although I don't have a job." Ruoxi pulled the corner of her mouth, which gave her a smile. The flying boat shuttled rapidly in the starry sky, and the energy waves behind it passed through the ship again and again, making a dendritic explosion sound. Her heart beats as fast as a drum beat, but there is no flash in her eyes. The truth of the rift, the tragic tragedy of the Alliance, the purpose of the storm, these questions are like a group of mists, covering her future. The starry sky ahead gradually twisted, and the familiar darkness of the crack appeared in the field again, huge and terrifying than ever before. The purple energy flow was wandering around, like some living thing, scattering a suffocating feeling of pressure. "Chen Guang, if I can't go back, remember to send the data to Zhang Haoren." Her voice was low, and she was tired. "Tell him, I'm not seeking death on purpose, but I must figure out some things." "Ruoxi, don't say this." Chen Guang's voice was rarely gentle, as if he was really worried about her. "I will protect you, no matter what price you use." The flying boat gradually approached the crack, and the darkness magnified infinitely before my eyes, like a huge mouth opened. The Alliance ships behind were still rushing to chase each other, and the explosion of energy waves was not absolutely loud. Ruoxi took a deep breath, clasped his fingers tightly and prepared to welcome the unknown impact. At the deepest point of the crack, a faint light flashed over again, like a call or a warning. She didn't know whether what was waiting for her ahead was to save her or destroy her, but she knew that this was the only way she could go. The starry sky twisted before her eyes, and the flying boat finally swayed into the edge of the crack, and then everything was swallowed by the edgeless darkness.